NATO has issued a condemnation of Russia's recent decision to deploy tactical nuclear weapons in Belarus, labeling the move as dangerous and irresponsible. Despite closely monitoring the situation, the organization stated that the move would not cause it to alter its own nuclear strategy. The U.S. has indicated that it does not believe that Russia is planning to use nuclear weapons. Belarus shares borders with both Ukraine and NATO members Poland, Lithuania, and Latvia. In response to President Putin's announcement, Ukraine has requested an emergency meeting of the UN Security Council to address the potential threat posed by the deployment of the weapons. President Putin claimed that Moscow would not be handing over control of its arms to Minsk, and that Belarusian leader Alexander Lukashenko, a staunch ally of the Kremlin and supporter of its invasion of Ukraine, had raised the issue with him. However, Ukraine has accused Russia of violating nuclear non-proliferation agreements, which President Putin denied, instead comparing the deployment to the US's stationing of weapons in Europe. NATO dismissed Russia's reference to nuclear sharing as misleading, and accused the country of repeatedly violating its own arms control commitments, including suspending the New START treaty. EU Foreign Policy Chief Josep Borrell urged Belarus to opt out of the deal with Putin, warning that the country could face further sanctions if it were to proceed with it. A top security advisor to Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, Oleksiy Danilov, accused Russia of making Belarus a nuclear hostage, and suggested that the move was a step towards internal destabilization in Belarus. Meanwhile, exiled Belarusian opposition leader Sviatlana Tikhanovskaya described the deployment of nuclear weapons in her country as grossly contradicting the will of the Belarusian people, and making it a potential target for retaliatory strikes. However, Yuri Sak, an advisor to Ukraine's Ministry of Defense, indicated that Ukraine was used to nuclear threats from Russia and that the deployment in Belarus would not alter the outcome of the war. He claimed that there was nothing new in Russia's behavior since it had been stationing military equipment in Belarus since the start of the war in 2022. Mikhailo Podolyak, another senior advisor to President Zelensky, dismissed the move as scare tactics, describing the Russian leader as too predictable. Analysts at the U.S. think tank Institute for War believed that the risk of escalation to nuclear war following the announcement remained extremely low. President Putin revealed in his address on Saturday that a small number of Iskander tactical missile systems, which can launch nuclear weapons, had already been transferred to Belarus. This will be the first time since the mid-1990s that Moscow will have stationed nuclear arms outside the country. After the collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991, weapons were based in 4 newly independent states: Russia, Ukraine, Belarus, and Kazakhstan, with all warheads transferred to Russia by 1996. Russia will begin training crews to operate the weapons from next week, with the construction of a storage facility for tactical nuclear weapons in Belarus to be completed by the 1st of July. The announcement follows Chinese President Xi Jinping's recent visit to Moscow, during which Russia and China issued a joint statement advocating that all nuclear powers must not deploy their nuclear weapons beyond their national territories, and they must withdraw all nuclear weapons deployed abroad.